in this video, we're going to take a quick look at some new functionality and a new way that you can add polls into a meeting, but you can do it before the meeting starts, so you can prep some stuff in advance. Now, this is really useful for people who use Teams for training, like myself, or want to prep a very important meeting and you've got some key things you want to discuss and some answers you want to find out. Now, previously, if you wanted to do polls within a meeting using Microsoft Forms, you'd need to go into the chat. So in the top bar, you'd click on the Show Conversations, and then down the bottom, very recently, they've enabled apps again in the new meeting functionality. You'd click on those three dots, and then you'd see Forms there. And you'd be able to create a quick question and answers on the fly right there and then and post them into the chat to get information back from everyone else who's in the meeting. What you can do now though is you can do some of that in advance, which is really great. I saw it a couple of days ago myself and I thought I need to do a video on this ASAP to show people, because I can just see the benefits of this straight away to myself and a lot of people who I've come across with in the past. So I'll show you how to set it up. Just a word of warning, it might not be available on your tenant yet. I do get some things in advance based on the way I've set my setup. So you might not see it there yet, but keep going in and having a look, and definitely use this functionality once it's there, just to prepare yourself in advance and get yourself ready for your meetings, for your training sessions, and anything you're using Microsoft Teams for. So I'm just going to reduce this meeting down. This is the one that I'm going to edit. And I'm going to go into my calendar in Microsoft Teams. So in Microsoft Teams here then, I'm in my calendar on the left hand side and I can see the meeting there today that I'm in. If I double click on that meeting, it's going to open up into the meeting information where I can make changes. Right at the top there, I can see the chat, I can see files, details and everything else. And I've also got a plus. And remember, the plus, if you're in a chat conversation or a channel, you can add more tabs. You can actually do the same in a meeting. And what they've created now is some applications that work really well. They've been optimized for meetings, and Forms is one of them. It's definitely useful to get yourself in there as soon as possible and give it a go. So when I click on that plus then in the meeting, so I have started this meeting, but it could be weeks or days or hours before this meeting. You can see you've got a couple up there at the top that have been optimized for meetings, and these are going to work really, really well. You can add other stuff as well, but if you wanted to add something like an Excel, a Word, a PowerPoint, you would have had to share the document beforehand, so the PowerPoint beforehand, if you wanted to add a PowerPoint tab, for example. Just like you would do in a normal chat conversation. But let's focus on the optimize for meetings, and let's click on Microsoft Forms just to see how this works. And I'm just going to get the normal screen, which tells me a little bit more about Forms, and I can add forms to my meeting. And you'll have to do this for each meeting you want it to work for. So click on add, and then I'm just going to get a little confirmation here telling me a little bit more about what I can do, and I'm just going to save. And you'll see at the top there, I've now got polls. So I've now got Microsoft Forms directly in my meeting. And like I said, I'm already in this meeting, but if you're not in this meeting, then you can prep loads of great stuff in advance. Even if you are in the meeting, it doesn't mean you have to push them out to anyone else. People won't be aware of this setup until you send them the survey questions. So if I just go pop back and open up that meeting again, you'll see a change. I've now got polls at the top, so I can now manage them from within the meeting as well. But I'm just going to close that. I'm going to reduce that down a second just so you can see it in the overview, and just come back into here where it says create new poll. So when I click there, I'm going to get a really familiar screen. I need a question and I need multiple answers. Exactly the same, absolutely no change. So whenever I'm demoing this in a training session for people who haven't used forms before, I always ask a very generic question, something like, how's the weather? And as I'm in England, it's always raining. And then I give them specific answers, depending on what it's doing outside. So I can put in as many answers as I want to by clicking on Add Option, and I can use the rubbish bin on the right hand side to remove any options. Nothing's changed here at all. You can also allow multiple answers because it could be raining, sunny and cloudy all at the same time, because that's the British weather. At the bottom, again, share results automatically after voting, keep responses anonymous. So I can decide how I want to set up my poll and then click on save. So previously when I'd done that in a meeting, that would then push it straight into the meeting chat and I could then start collecting responses. So I couldn't prepare it in advance, but now you'll see here, this is in draft. So it's not been shared in the meeting yet and I'm not collecting any responses. Let's just go into the meeting and just show you that that's not happened. So yeah, we can see our meeting chat there and there is nothing in there at the moment. So I'll just get rid of that again and just have a look in here. I can see I've got create new, so I can create more in advance, as many as I want to, and then I've got this nice little launch button. When I click on the drop down, I've got an edit and I've got a delete option. Now it's the launch button that's going to push it into the chat. So that's the one that's really useful. So you can then push them in there when you need to use them. But you've prepped all of this in advance. If anything changes halfway through your session, you do have the option to edit to make it more relevant, or even delete it if it's not relevant anymore. So if I just pop back to my meeting, let's just have a look at polls. Forms. It's called slightly different things depending on where you are in the top of this meeting functionality. When I click on it there, it's going to, on the right hand side, give me information of the polls that I've created that I'm ready to send. And again, I've got that launch button, I've got edit and I've got delete, and I've also got create new. So I can do it whilst I'm in the meeting as well, but I have to add Microsoft Forms to the meeting outside of the meeting. So I have to go to calendar, edit the meeting and add a tab there. Once I've done that, I can then manipulate my polls there, or I can do it directly in the meeting. But all the way through this, I'm doing it in advance, which is brand new and something that I know quite a few people that I've spoken to are really keen to be able to do that. So you can prep and you can plan. Especially for trainers like myself, we want to make sure we're not putting too much stress on ourselves. We want to get things ready in advance so we can use and we can make it super interactive, and then we can focus on really adding the value rather than having to very quickly create a poll question that we would have wanted to create in advance. So have a go at this once this appears on your tenant. There is some other applications there that are optimized for meetings if you do use them. This is one that I reckon a lot of people will use and get some really great value out of it. I'm just going to click launch finally to finish this and show you the end-to-end process. You can now see it's live. I can see the questions come up in the middle of my screen, and if I just go to the chat conversation, it's just going to be in there as well. So that looks absolutely the same, but you've saved yourself loads of time, effort and stress. Rather than doing it on the fly, at the time when you need to do it, you can create them in advance and have a load there ready as well, just to push through when you need to. Have a go when it comes on your tenant, see how you get on. Let us know if you've got any questions.